Why did you write Lolita?
Why did I write Lolita? Why did I write any of my books, after all? For the sake of the pleasure, for the sake of the difficulty. See, I have no social purpose, no moral message. I'm not a messenger. I have no general ideas to exploit. I'm not a general. But I like composing riddles. I like finding elegant solutions to my riddles, to those riddles that I have composed myself.
As a writer, Vladimir Nabokov greatly enjoyed teasing his readers with anagrams, identity games, chess problems, and codes. To date, however, insufficient attention has been paid to his Lolita riddle. In this investigation, I show how the author's elegant solution discloses secret information about his own childhood. Contrary to what many people might think, Nabokov imbued his art with a covert child protection agenda that has yet to be recognized.
Vladimir Nabokov was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1899. His father and mother were members of the upper-class elite. The family's principal residence was located at the Admiralty end of majestic Nevsky Prospect. During the summer, the family usually holidayed at their country estate, Vyra, located to the city's south. As a young boy, Vladimir was surrounded by all the trappings of a thoroughly pampered and privileged childhood. One person who lavished particular attention on Vladimir during his formative years was Uncle Ruka, the brother of his mother, Elena. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 brought an abrupt end to the opulent lifestyle of the Russian aristocracy. The family fled to the Crimea and then on to Europe. Vladimir completed an undergraduate degree at Cambridge University, England, in the early 1920s before settling in Berlin. Within Russian émigré circles, he quickly gained a reputation as a talented writer. He married Vera Slonim in 1925, and the couple's only child, Dmitri, was born in 1934. The rise of Nazi Germany once again forced Nabokov into exile. Accompanied by his wife and child, he moved to France before finally escaping across the Atlantic on the SS Champlain. Following his arrival in New York, he was employed by various universities as a researcher and lecturer. The move to America consolidated the author's decision to switch from Russian to the English language. Nabokov's famous novel Lolita was first published in a 2-volume set by the Olympia Press of Paris in 1955. The novel's main character is a mentally unstable, middle-aged pedophile named Humbert Humbert. Humbert marries suburban housewife Charlotte Hayes to gain access to her 12-year-old daughter, Lolita. Throughout his sexual enslavement of Lolita, Humbert constantly fears his shadowy rival, Quilty, otherwise known as Q, will usurp him. Back in the 1950s, the novel's focus on the incestuous abuse of a young girl stirred up enormous moral controversy. Lolita was banned for a short period of time in the UK, Belgium, France and Australia. The heated debate that ensued in the UK Parliament temporarily sidelined the Suez Canal crisis of 1956. The immediate uproar and protests were eventually waylaid, however, by a backlash against censorship. The humorous narrative Nabokov afforded Humbert has since disarmed many readers. From its opening, mesmerizing lines, we remain spellbound by the author's evocative prose.
Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita, the tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap it free on the teeth, Lolita.
Despite lingering unanswered questions concerning the author's motivations for writing Lolita, the novel has now sold in excess of 50 million copies worldwide. Lolita firmly established Vladimir Nabokov as a leading author of the 20th century. Any fleeting analysis soon reveals Nabokov's long preoccupation with adult child sex. Adult males with an unhealthy interest in young girls appear in many of his novels, including Laughter in the Dark, Invitation to a Beheading, The Gift, The Enchanter, Ben Sinister, Lolita, and Look at the Harlequins. Nabokov personally regarded pedophilia as the commonest thing. As literary critic Christopher Hitchens observed in his recent tribute to Lolita, it is clear Nabokov thought a great deal about adult men having sex with children. To date, critical appraisal of Nabokov's prose has largely been conducted through conventional literary lenses. New insights into the author's work can be gleaned, however, by approaching his writings from a more scientific angle. Nabokov was a highly respected scientist as well as a writer. He made many significant contributions to the study of butterflies and moths, or Lepidoptera.
You're an expert in butterflies.
I am to a certain extent.
During a 1958 interview, Nabokov confirmed he read many psychological case studies as part of his background research for Lolita.
But you must have read in a newspaper or been aware of this strange sexual symbolism or this oddity in a minority of humans which has shocked so many people about Lolita.
I have read a considerable number of case histories. I would say that I became quite an expert in those matters. I have not.
The pioneering work of the 19th century sexologists Richard von Krafft-Ebing and Havelock Ellis exerted a significant influence on Nabokov. Krafft-Ebing's major text, Psychopathia Sexualis, is widely credited with introducing the term pedophilia erotica into the modern taxonomy. Krafft-Ebing regarded pedophiles as non-virile, silly, weak, and mentally unstable men. Nabokov's portrait of Humbert as a fragile, European-style dandy reflects his broad agreement on the effeminate demeanour and unbalanced mind of the child molester. Nabokov regarded Havelock Ellis as his favourite sexologist. Humbert's confessional first-person narrative in Lolita was heavily influenced by the case study of the anonymous Russian pedophile Victor X, published in 1926. In his work on sexual inversion, Ellis described boy marriage by capture arrangements prevailing in countries such as Albania, Greece and Persia. Ellis also recognised the once common sexual abuse of boys in Turkish bathhouses and noted how some boys, trapped in pedophilic relationships, wore makeup and dressed and behaved like girls. Although influenced by Krafft-Ebing and Ellis, Nabokov's literature offers more profound insights into pedophilia. For one thing, he recognised the intensity of the predator's aesthetic and erotic preference for children's physically immature bodies. While undertaking research for Lolita, he compiled statistics on the average age, height and weight of young American girls. Humbert duly informs the reader his nymphette stands 4 foot 9 inches tall and weighs only 78 pounds. When he books in at the Enchanted Hunters Hotel, Humbert indicates Lolita is only 10 years old, not 12. Unfortunately, Lolita's prepubescent status has been obscured by the 2 film adaptations. Both Sue Lyon and Dominique Swain are considerably older, taller and heavier than Humbert's nymphette. Although Stanley Kubrick hired Nabokov as a scriptwriter and film consultant, he ignored the author's suggestion that a dwarf play the role of Lolita. Nabokov's literary profile of the pedophile has won high praise from trained professionals. Psychologist James Hawley lauded Nabokov for offering fascinating insights into the thoughts, feelings and actions of a child molester. Nabokov frequently sought to expose the child predator's deeply disturbed reality. His deviant characters experience a range of distorted cognitions, including verbal, hearing and vision problems, as well as empathy deficits. Only recently have human science researchers begun to regard such characteristics as defining hallmarks of pedophilia. Within The Enchanter, Arthur climbs into bed beside 12-year-old Maria and sees her through cut glass. He is unable to find the focal point of happiness. Humbert too must make a focal adjustment in order to detect his elusive nymphette. While stalking Lolita, he sees her through prismatic layers of light and leers at her taut little rear through the wrong end of the telescope. Later on, Humbert confuses his rival Quilty's envious question, "Where the devil did you get her?" for "the weather is getting better." Speech difficulties constantly afflict Humbert as he lisps like a snake, "Yes, I try," and asks Lolita, "What's the catter with missus?" instead of "What's the matter with kisses?" His detached observation of Lolita's sobs in the night, "Every night the moment I feign sleep," reflect Humbert's tragic inability to empathize with his young victim. Modern research confirms pedophiles tend to blame children, insisting they were seduced by their victims. Via his novels, Nabokov drew attention to the modus operandi of pedophiles. His plotlines describe the child predators' stalking behaviors as well as their tendency to target single mothers with children. Humbert and Arthur both pursue widows with young daughters. Nabokov highlighted the pedophile's secret pursuit of voyeuristic pleasures. Humbert secretly masturbates while spying on a nymphette. Nabokov was also keenly aware of how some pedophiles resort to drugging victims to advance their objectives. Arthur contemplates sedating his wife so that he can molest 12-year-old Maria. Humbert experiments with different strength tranquilizers, dropping them into Charlotte's nightcap so that he might have his way with Lolita. At the enchanted Hunter's Hotel, Humbert tricks Lolita into swallowing a purple pill and is bitterly disappointed to find her fully awake when he joins her in bed. In The Enchanter and Lolita, Nabokov exposes how pedophiles pamper and seduce children in order to gain their cooperation. Arthur bribes Maria and her mother with glazed chestnuts. Humbert sends Lolita chocolates while she's away at summer camp. Both men ponder how best to initiate their child victims into sexualized activities. Arthur knows he must not make too precipitous an attempt on Maria's virginity in the tightest and pinkest sense of the term. As part of his sexual foreplay, Humbert licks Lolita's eyeball, strokes her shins, and engages in an act of frotterism with her on the Davenport. Nabokov was also well aware of the pedophile's aesthetic taste for child pornography. After Lolita proves to be too precocious, Humbert eventually discovers she was recruited into a child pornography ring by Quilty back at summer camp. Quilty later tries to appease Humbert by offering to show him his erotica collection. Popular culture's long affair with seductive Lolita consistently ignores the hidden sexual training she was subjected to in the sordid underworld ruled by the child pornographer. Nabokov's literature also opens doors to the pedophile community's long reliance on codes. In life as well as art, pedophiles have often been likened to spiders that drug and cocoon their prey before sucking them dry. In Australian prison slang, pedophiles are known as rock spiders. The arachnid theme may owe a debt to the Mother Goose tale Little Miss Muffet. Nabokov made deft use of the spider pedophile metaphor within his writings. In Invitation to Beheading, a spider inhabits Cincinnatus's prison cell as young Emmy dances around, begging him to marry her. Within The Enchanter, Arthur is compared to a spider as he stalks children in a park. He imagines embracing Maria with 8 hands, which turned into 8 tentacles affixed to every detail of her nudity. The spider pedophile analogy is reinforced in Lolita, where Humbert morphs into a spider spinning and plucking at his web as he lies in wait for his hapless nymphette. The pedophilic underworld has made a habit of appropriating themes from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland tales. In 1998, police cracked the sophisticated KGB encryption code used by the Wonderland Club, which traded thousands of child porn images over the internet.
Wonderland became an obsession, a virtual community that brought paedophiles together.
A recent FBI report found some members of the pedophile community now favour wearing jewellery featuring triangles within triangles and hearts within hearts. Nabokov's memoirs suggest an older pedophilic code that equates a child with a green leaf may have brought an abrupt end to his own idyllic childhood. A scientifically orientated analysis suggests that in writing Lolita, Nabokov attempted to share much needed information about child molesters with the general public. His literary preoccupation with incest and pedophilia is nothing short of remarkable. Is it possible Nabokov had deeply personal, albeit secret, reasons for pursuing this troubling subject matter? Nabokov's multi-layered interrogation of the pedophile's secret underworld extended to the movies. Anticipating queries raised by more recent critics such as Marion Sinclair, the author detected unsavoury currents beneath Hollywood's glittering surface. With Lolita, he took special delight in mocking suspect scenes found in Shirley Temple films. The iconic child star, Shirley Temple, was born on April 23, 1928. For 4 years during the Great Depression, this talented little girl remained America's #1 box office attraction. Shirley began her long film career at age 3 when she starred in an all-child cast Baby Burlesque series, produced and directed by Jack Hayes and Charles Lamont. Lamont is widely credited with being Shirley's discoverer. During the 1930s, the Baby Burlesque short film screened regularly before the main feature. Commonly interpreted as innocent, fun-filled spoofs on leading actresses of the stage and cinema, the Baby Burlesque films are in fact replete with disturbing slapstick jokes and sly innuendos. As the leading lady, Shirley Temple frequently played a prostitute or nightclub performer. In Glad Rags to Riches, she was La Belle Diaperina, a dancer at the Lullaby Lobster Palace. Her beau, Elmer, fails to impress when he chomps down hard on an enormous pickle. In Wool Babies, Pipsqueak Shirley played the diaper-clad harlot Gloria. The toddler soldiers, hanging around Pete's Buttermilk Cafe, compete for her attention by presenting her with enormous lollipops. Titillating side entertainment is provided by the tap-dancing African-American boy who performs a slow striptease down to his underwear. Down on all fours, another toddler sits open-mouthed beneath an overturned baby bottle. A large sign in the background states, "Sour milk." When things go awry, Gloria comes to the rescue by pulling a rubber glove from her purse and attaching it to a keg of sweet milk. As the youngster suckles away, a man can be heard moaning rather than mooing on the accompanying soundtrack. Shirley's prostitute status is ultimately confirmed when a patron triumphantly picks his teeth with the bobby pin that held up her diaper. Shirley again played a call girl in Politics in Washington. Hired by the nipple and anti-castor oil lobby, she sets out to corrupt a new bumpkin senator. When Senator Clodbuster succumbs to her wily charms, Polly confirms her sex-for-hire status by stating,
I'm expensive.
Clodbuster's fall from grace sees him go down on a giant cake, bizarrely spewing white icing behind him like a lawnmower. In the last Baby Burlesque film, Kid in Africa, Shirley played the cannibal civilizing Christian missionary Madame Cradlebait. Attired in hot pants and a white safari hat, the pistol-wielding madam journeys through the jungle accompanied by an obedient troop of African coolies. During a raid, she is captured and stuck in a cliché cooking pot. After seasoning her with salt, the cannibal chief asks the telephone operator to connect him to extension 342. After Madame Cradlebait is rescued by miniature Tarzan, the action abruptly shifts to an eerie post-honeymoon scene outside the Squaldorf Hotel. An African child carrying a Weary Nipple Cafe Specials billboard tanks up at the Last Chance filling station by sucking on the end of a gas pump. The mouthfuls he swallows are conveniently monitored on the gulp meter standing nearby. In case you missed it, here's a longer close-up of the pump's nozzle. Nabokov directly linked Kid in Africa's subliminal pedophile code to Lolita via a strategy of reiterated themes and numerology. At the Enchanted Hunters Hotel, Humbert and his nymphette bunk down in room 342. Throughout the night, Humbert's sleep is disturbed by the sound of a flushing toilet, a tainted reminder of the ever-popular honeymoon trip to the Niagara Falls. After Lolita escapes with Quilty, Humbert searches 342 hotels and motels in a vain attempt to track down his elusive nymphette. Nabokov also parodied Charles Lamont's 1934 short film Managed Money. Stowaway Shirley sets off with her teenage brother Sonny through a cactus-infested Californian desert. En route, they are bewitched by a luxurious mansion that turns out to be a Fata Morgana, or optical illusion. When they stop to prospect for gold, Shirley backs into a prickly pear. A man suddenly pops out from behind a saguaro and starts laughing. In Lolita's lampooning retake, Humbert dreams of spinning on to California, to the Mexican border, to mythical bays, saguaro deserts, Fata Morganas. Shirley may have left her career as a child prostitute behind after she was signed up by 20th Century Fox in 1934, but the suspicious scenes did not disappear altogether. Cast as an orphan, motherless child or runaway, the plot lines of Shirley's feature films now revolved around children's institutions and custody battles. Some guardians displayed an odd talent for meeting untimely ends. In Bright Eyes, Shirley's mother is run over by a speeding vehicle as she crosses the road to catch a bus. Her stern governess meets an equally grisly end in Poor Little Rich Girl. The coincidental car accident theme was ridiculed in Lolita when Charlotte Hayes is run over on the way to posting a letter that would expose Humbert's perverse interest in her daughter. In Bright Eyes, Shirley dances coquettishly down the aisle under the too appreciative gaze of her aviator pals. Brandishing huge lollipops, the all-male crew proceed to maul Shirley. They pick her up, shove a box of Cracker Jacks under one arm, and press her face into an oversized cake that leaves traces of white icing around her mouth. In a mocking reenactment, Humbert complains of catching Little Limp Low dripping a look in the direction of a friendly mechanic and bursting into a perfect love song of wisecracks as soon as he turns his back to buy a lollipop. Shirley often comforts her male co-stars in a too adult fashion. Sometimes she fiddles flirtatiously with their ties. Shades of incest creep into Poor Little Rich Girl, as Shirley lies cradled in her father's arms, stroking his face and singing. Incest seems a safer option than being stalked by a creepy child predator who tries to lure her with peppermint candy. In Rebecca's Sunnybrook Farm, Shirley loses her voice and is examined by a doctor behind a locked door without an accompanying adult. Depraved choreography is seen in Captain January, where Shirley has a close encounter with her dancing co-star, Buddy Ebsen. The gratuitous slapstick gags continued. Some of Shirley's studio portraits also present her in a distinctly inappropriate manner. Further signs of a covert pedophilic agenda are discernible in Curly Top, where millionaire benefactor Edward Morgan is utterly bewitched by his orphan ward. Crooning, "It's all so new to me," he eagerly anticipates the new thrills on offer in my Wonderland. Morgan dreams of an utterly naked cherubic Shirley gilded in gold paint. Although this scene was either cut or censored, in her autobiography, Shirley recalled fearing death by toxic asphyxiation as she plunged a mythical dart into Morgan's heart. Morgan's hallucinations continue as all the paintings in his study are suddenly haunted by Shirley's image. In Lolita, the piano scene is comically revisited when Quilty stops to sing a few hysterical sonorities accompanied by soundtrack snorts as Humbert chases him around Pavor Mansion. Why, we may ask, is Shirley's dress shorter at the back than the front as she pirouettes on top of the grand piano? And what exactly was the purpose of the scene where Shirley creeps into Morgan's bedroom, then jiggles up and down on his stomach? At least Denmark had the sense to ban Curly Top for unspecified corruption upon its release. Curly Top makes use of the telltale spider code. This theme emerges after Morgan buys a hula dress and ukulele for his tiny ward, and we see Shirley dancing in a grass skirt. A short while later, Shirley is lying on the beach reading a comic strip. The camera zooms in on a cartoon where a man yells, "There's a big spider in your skirt," to a woman in a hula dress. A voyeuristic close-up of Shirley's buttocks ensues as she rocks back and forth on a seahorse in a swimsuit that is conveniently too small for her. Nabokov parodied this scene by having Lolita swipe the comics from Humbert before flopping down on her belly to read on the piazza. This time it is Humbert who rocks back and forth, as the girl's smell at once set my manhood astir. Despite her enormous popularity, Shirley Temple did have some critics in the 1930s. American film critic Gilbert Seldes compared Shirley to Mae West, the reigning sex goddess, and recommended her directors face a firing squad at daybreak. Seldes thought Shirley's dimpled cuteness had very little to do with her real power, because at her good moments, something like a growl of satisfaction arises from the men in the audience. Across the Atlantic, British writer Graham Greene similarly argued that Shirley attracted male audiences for all the wrong reasons. In his review of Captain January, Greene queried the director's motivations, asserting the camera was being used in a salacious manner to provoke disreputable enjoyment. In his 1937 review of Wee Willie Winkie, published by Night and Day magazine, Greene again went on the attack, insisting, "Infancy with her is a disguise. Her appeal is more secret and more adult. Her neat and well-developed rump twisted in the tap dance, her eyes had a sidelong searching coquetry." This time, 20th Century Fox retaliated, winning substantial damages from Greene for implying it had procured Miss Temple for immoral purposes. Nearly 2 decades later, Graham Greene was an early reader and fan of Lolita. He must have appreciated the novel's little recognized critique of the Hollywood Shirley Temple industry. In his review, Greene praised Lolita as one of the best books published in 1955. His comments sparked a heated debate over morality in censorship that eventually culminated in Lolita hitting #1 on the bestsellers list in the UK and America. Shirley Temple's legacy lingers on in her movies, books, dolls, figurines, and other collectibles. Questions about the motivations of her Hollywood directors are rarely raised. Nabokov very aptly summed up these anxieties when he had Humbert parade past Lolita in my adult disguise, a great big handsome hunk of movieland manhood. Nabokov's critique of pedophilia included throwing several barbed comments in the direction of the famous Victorian writer, the Reverend Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, better known to many as Lewis Carroll. Dodgson is the author of 2 famous children's tales, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. The two stories were inspired by Dodgson's ideal child friend, Alice Liddell. Dodgson first met Alice when she was only 4 years old. Nabokov developed an interest in Charles Dodgson while studying at Cambridge. By the early 1920s, he had already completed a Russian translation of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Although Nabokov esteemed Dodgson the writer, he held deep reservations about Dodgson, the historic person. During a 1966 interview, he acidly remarked, "I always call him Lewis Carroll Carroll, because he was the first Humbert Humbert." Nabokov's disparaging reference to Dodgson's wretched perversion strongly suggests he regarded this eminent Victorian as a pedophile. Photography became a popular new hobby during the Victorian era. Charles Dodgson proved to be a very gifted amateur. Alice and the Little Children were an early focus of Dodgson's output. In 1858, Dodgson took an especially remarkable photograph of 6-year-old Alice dressed up as a beggar maid. He posed Alice in a tattered urchin garment with both straps pushed down, leaving her shoulders exposed. The portrait is rather too mature and provocative for such a little girl. Nude studies of children were very popular in Victorian society. Semi-naked children, typically girls, happily adorned family albums, postcards and greeting cards, dressed up as cherubs, angels, elves and fairy queens. Charles Dodgson began photographing nude children during the 1860s, setting them against a variety of painted landscapes. In a letter, Dodgson indicated his strong preference for girls' physiques. "I confess, I do not admire naked boys in pictures. They always seem to me to need clothes, whereas one hardly sees why the lovely forms of girls should ever be covered up." Further suspicions about Dodgson's aesthetic tastes are raised by his overly alluring and seductive portrait of 7-year-old Beatrice Hatch. After unwelcome rumours began circulating about his hobby in 1881, Dodgson destroyed the glass plates of his child nude studies by wiping them clean. In accordance with his final wishes, the executor of Dodgson's estate burnt the surviving nude prints following his death. Lolita bears witness to Nabokov's jaundiced opinion of the reverend subterranean worlds. A breeze from Wonderland affects Humbert's sensibilities as he leers at his nymphette at the enchanted Hunter's Hotel. Humbert's eye is mockingly compared to an alert periscope as he spies upon a half-naked nymphette stilled in the act of combing her Alice in Wonderland hair. Nabokov expressed great disdain for Dodgson's nude child studies, accusing him of getting away with pederasty and nympholepsy, like so many other Victorians. He strenuously denounced the real-life farces of a world that had condemned Oscar Wilde for flaunting a flamboyant perversion and getting caught, while Dodgson had hidden his humble but much more evil little secret behind the emulsions of the developing room. Nabokov's under-evaluated critique of Carroll's fantasy fiction extended to chess. A chess game features as the frontispiece to Carroll's second Alice tale, Through the Looking Glass. Within that story, movements made by various characters, including Pawn Alice, the Red Queen and the White Knight, correspond to movements made on the board. Charles Dodgson is commonly thought to be represented by the White Knight in the game. The plot line in Through the Looking Glass reaches a climax when Alice is crowned after reaching the end of the board. In solving Nabokov's Lolita riddle, Joanne Morgan has argued that Nabokov shadowed and parodied Through the Looking Glass at length within Ben Sinister. Metaphors involving passive pawns, cooked chess problems, rooks and kings abound within Ben Sinister. Adam Krug, the central character, is likened to a chess master. As the plot unfolds, an 8-year-old David is mistakenly admitted to an institute for abnormal children and sexually tormented by big boys. Like Through the Looking Glass, the novel reaches a crescendo when David is crowned, this time with a Turkish-style turban. Inspired by Lewis Carroll, Nabokov underpinned Ben's sinister with a chess strategy uniquely his own. Although he was a lifelong devotee of chess, Nabokov's real expertise lay in devising chess problems. Chess problems typically challenge expert solvers to checkmate the opposition in 2 or 3 moves. Via his Ben Sinister chess problem, Nabokov ingeniously engaged Lewis Carroll in a symbolic chess duel. In a letter sent to New Yorker editor Catherine White, Nabokov noted how the first edition of Alice in the Looking Glass carries a very subtle and difficult chess problem. He expressed hope New Yorker readers would find his own chess game less bewildering. Within Carroll's Looking Glass chess game, the opening move is made by the masculine-looking Red Queen, who scampers away from Alice on a ladder-like trajectory ascending left to right. Within heraldry, such a diagonal is known as a bend sinister. Dodgson's intense attachment to Alice has led some critics to interpret this trajectory, a la Freud, in sexual terms. One psychoanalyst boldly insisted the Red Queen somehow personified uncontrolled animal passions. Rather more cagily, in The White Knight, Scottish critic Alexander Taylor concluded Carroll was not interested in the game as a game, but in the implications of the moves. Discernible patterns in Nabokov's writings suggest he too regarded the Red Queen's opening move, along with Alice's coronation scene, as implied threats to children's safety. As a stylist, Nabokov displayed a singular talent for building interactive patterns between his novels, memoirs and chess problems. Nabokov discussed his Ben Sinister chess problem at some length in his memoirs. There he strongly hinted the problem contained an encoded message. The bishop, he explained, was a metaphor for a searchlight, whereas the knight was likened to an adjustable lever, a tool typically used to pry things open. The prospect of deciphering Nabokov's unorthodox code was guaranteed by the author's assurance that the normally censoring controller had finally allowed vital pieces of information to escape, so that the hidden meaning of his chess symbols might be divulged.
To unlock Nabokov's anti-Wonderland chess code, we need to assume the pawn represents a child, the knight a child predator, and the bishop a protective guardian or parent. We must also take heed of Nabokov's suspicions regarding the Red Queen's opening move and Alice's coronation.
In Nabokov's Bend Sinister chess problem, 2 pawns face imminent danger of being queened. The white pawn is 1 square away, whereas the black pawn is 2 squares from its coronation. Should the black pawn advance to the end of the board, it is in danger of being molested by the black knight. The clever solution to Nabokov's problem relies on white avoiding the temptation of queening the pawn. Instead, it must propel the searchlight bishop into action. By impeding the black pawn's advance, the bishop ensures the incestuous rendezvous with the knight can never take place. Regardless of what black does next, white achieves checkmate on the next move. The subtle child protection agenda advanced by Nabokov's anti-Wonderland strategy is reinforced by the bishop's protective move, which reverses the Red Queen's ichthyphalic trajectory, affecting a form of symbolic castration. The commentary Nabokov provides within Speak Memory about his Ben Sinister chess problem lends weight to Morgan's decoding analysis. There we find Nabokov admitting his chess strategy involved an unusual line of defense, which might provide a glimpse of the actual configuration of men. The gender challenge raised by Nabokov's spectacular defense is further reinforced by the author's arcane, alchemical expectation that his efforts would somehow hasten the wedding of a new couple via sacred fire. Centuries ago, the alchemists sought to forge an everlasting union between mind and body and male and female essences within their ancient laboratories. In the closing discussion devoted to his chess strategy, Nabokov mysteriously anticipated that this exalted marital state would one day compensate him for the misery of the deceit.
Back in 2008, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein was convicted for sexually soliciting numerous underage girls as young as 12 and engaging in sex acts with them. It later came out that this man, Jeffrey Epstein, was the head of a massive pedophile sex ring, which allegedly served high-profile figures such as Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, and even Bill Clinton. Earlier this year, it then came out that Jeffrey Epstein's butler, Mr. Alfredo Rodriguez, was able to obtain Mr. Jeffrey Epstein's little black book of contacts that Rodriguez claimed was the holy grail to figuring out and breaking down this massive pedophile sex ring. Now, there were many names listed in this black book, many high-profile figures, but some of them were circled by Mr. Jeffrey Epstein's butler, Rodriguez. Among these names was former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, nephew of billionaire George Soros, Peter Soros, and of course, the GOP contender for President of the United States in 2016, Mr. Donald Trump. Now, I want to reiterate the fact that this man, Alfredo Rodriguez, claimed that this little black book and these circled names was the holy grail to dismantling and convicting the members involved in this massive pedophile sex ring headed by Jeffrey Epstein. And before Rodriguez could detail specifically the significance of these circled names, he died, supposedly of mesothelioma. So it remains a mystery why these names were circled, why Mr. Alfredo Rodriguez wanted to highlight these names, and why he called it the Holy Grail to exposing this massive billionaire pedophile ring. Now, as many of you know, I recently put out a video exposing the fact that Donald Trump has been known to be buddy-buddy with the Clintons, has been known to donate to the Clinton Foundation and to be a contributor to the Clinton presidential campaigns regarding this massive pedophile sex scandal. It also came out earlier this year that flight logs released put Clinton and Dershowitz on Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile private sex jet, quote-unquote, the Lolita Express, named after the movie Lolita, which was openly about having sex with underage girls. It also came out that sworn statements from Virginia Roberts, the woman who claimed she was a teen sex slave forced to have sex with Prince Andrew, included the allegation that she saw the former President Bill Clinton on Epstein's quote-unquote orgy island. And then subsequently after that, and this is pretty damning if you ask me. It came out that billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein sent Bill Clinton $3.5 million from a secret Swiss bank account, according to a whistleblower. Now, remember what I previously said about Clinton obtaining a deal on behalf of Epstein and Prince Andrew and others to basically cover all this up and quell the legal, social, and political backlash received by these disgusting pedophiles. So I don't know about you, but to me this is pretty obvious. These people are all in with the same crowd. The Clintons, the Epsteins, the Trumps. And they all watch each other's back. They're all in on this, okay? Clinton made efforts to absolve Epstein and others, Prince Andrew. You see Trump in this guy's little black book, in Epstein's little black book, circled and highlighted. The guy's butler, Epstein's butler, called this the Holy Grail to breaking this pedophile ring down. I mean, the Israeli prime minister, these are high-level figures. We all know that a lot of these elites are into pedophilia and stuff like that. Trump connected with all this, allegedly, as you can see here, becomes pretty obvious.